Hello, hello. Hey, this is Rob Rosa. Hopefully, your favorite real estate broker, my friends. All right. We have some fun here today. We're going live, and I want to give you some open and truthful information on real estate. So that's our number one goal here. I do have a couple of items that I'd love to go over with you that I want to talk about. One of them is not real estate prices, right? There is, and this is according to an article that came out on Bigger Pockets. And thank you so much for joining us. I want to let you know that we are available for questions. So through this live, I want you to know that you can ask as many questions as you want. In fact, if you even want to join me here online, you can do that. I'm not sure I can figure out exactly how to do that, but if it's something that you want to do, you can request it, or you can write your question in the comments, and then I will try to answer them as much as possible. But as people are joining us and as we're having some discussions about real estate, I do have this article from biggerpockets.com. And what it really talks about is credit and what's going on with credit in the marketplace. Because when it comes down to it, that might be the thing that spells trouble for what's going on in the market, right? It might not be, especially if you're an investor, even if you're a residential investor, commercial investor, maybe you own a condo, maybe you just own your own home, or you're even thinking about it. Well, let's talk about how the credit market could spell some trouble for us. And there's a lot of different news that's mixed news, right? I mean, right now, some reports will tell us, hey, prices are not going to fall as much as everybody thinks, and they might even rise next year. So believe it or not, my focus is Connecticut, and believe it or not, November year over year, prices were actually up 8.3% for residential real estate here in Connecticut year over year in November. For October, it was about 9%, and for September, it was about 13.4%, I think was the exact number. And so that's telling you that yes, it is slowing down a little bit, but prices are still higher than they were year over year. Okay. So we still might have this ticking time bomb in real estate, and it's not housing prices or higher interest rates. It's a credit market that we have to be careful of what's going on. So let's talk about, first of all, and of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. If you want to be a guest online, you could definitely do that as well. Right now, credit markets are not really followed very, very tightly by a lot of people, right? I mean, we know about interest rates, right? But we also typically look at unemployment. We look at Wall Street, what's going on with that. We look at how many housing starts are there, right? We look at existing home sales and prices, which we just discussed those, right? But believe it or not, credit cycles can actually have a greater impact than these widely followed and studied indicators. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Well, what is the credit cycle? So credit markets are extremely volatile, right? They can be wide open one day. One day they're lending out all kinds of money to commercial and residential investors and slam shut the next day. And you just don't know. So when the credit markets start to throttle down, right? It will likely impact a lot of residential and commercial real estate investments more than it might impact things like, food and gasoline, believe it or not, because people will no longer be able to invest the way that they see fit, the way that they want to, right? So, and also credit cycles are significantly impacted by psychology, right? So this is one of the reasons that these cycles and others like Wall Street are so volatile and unpredictable, because there's that human factor involved, right? We don't know how to accurately predict how investors are going to feel. So how do you feel right now about investing in today's market, real estate market, and where are you from? Share that info with me. Let me know. I would love to be able to respond back to you and try to help you every step of the way. Right. And so that might be something that, if you want to do, that would be great, so that we can talk a little bit about that. Because when it comes to investing, there's definitely a human factor that's involved. Right. And it's impossible for any investor, right, no matter how sophisticated you might be, right, to accurately predict the future of credit cycles, and thus the real estate market in general. Right? So, how can we really predict the future? We don't know what's going to change tomorrow. There might be something on the news right now that I don't know about, that I haven't seen, and it could be significantly impacting our credit. Okay? And so people have a lot of different opinions, whether it's Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Howard Marks. Everyone has an opinion on what's going on with the impact of credit cycles and how it could affect us. All right. So first off, capital, right? Capital, money, right? Money must be available for maturing debt to be refinanced. Right? So when it comes to commercial, this is something that you might have a 10, a 3, a 5, a 7, a 10 or 12-year cycle. You see, with residential mortgages, it's more of a 30-year timeline for the most part, right? But commercial financing matures in much shorter time frames. So we might be talking about commercial real estate debt, right? Again, it doesn't have as many years. And we know that there are a lot of real estate loans that have been initiated several years ago, right, that need to be refinanced in the coming months and years. And so that's going to have an effect on what we're doing, right? And so as you could imagine, if interest rates are going way up, right, or if there's less credit available, if there's less banks or lenders that are willing to offer credit, right, this could be devastating for many real estate investors, right? For many people who are in the industry, right? And so unless the income has significantly increased over the past several years, which income has gone up a little bit, but it's kind of likely we will see some defaults. And we're not used to seeing defaults very much these days. You can share your thoughts with me, but how often have you heard people saying, oh, my property is being foreclosed on, right? I'm no longer paying my mortgage. I can't pay my mortgage. We haven't seen a lot of these real estate foreclosures that really do cause a lot of pain and suffering, all right? So if this does begin to happen, now there might be some potential opportunity for well-positioned investors. Well, what makes an investor well-positioned? Cash, baby, right? If you have the cash and you're ready to make some moves, right, you might be considered a well-positioned investor, right? So that would be something that, you want to think about in what you're doing. Now, banks and other financial institutions, what's going on with them? Well, right now, those are the sites for a lot of mismatches for the need for capital, right? Because right now, banks have massive demand deposits that can be cashed in on a day-to-day deposit, on a day-to-day basis, right? But they've loaned that money out and much more to borrowers who have long time frames, sometimes up to 30 years. Now, if you're following me, you understand and realize that this may cause financial institutions to be very cautious in their lending, even when an economy looks generally healthy. I believe this is happening right now, and this is what the author of this article says, and I agree with it. Right now, increased risk premiums built in many of the loans are showing some evidence. The throttling down on a lot of lending right now is more evident. I have someone, they're looking to buy a church. They can't do it. They can't find a loan for it. I have someone who wanted to buy a big mixed use property in Harford County. They couldn't find a good loan for it. The seller actually found someone, I found someone who had cash, and that was great, right? But I might have been able to sell it even faster and quicker to someone else, but they could not find the financing that they needed. So this is this is showing more evidence and evidence every day that at least, since the market has gone down, has slowed down, and since interest rates have gone up, it's showing every day on how there's potential tightening up of lending, right? So credit markets, they give off these massive signals that create potentially devastating psychological impacts. How's that for you? Right? Psychological impacts. But it is a vicious cycle, because what happens? It happens to all of us. We hear the news. And what do? We hear the news, we get a little bit spooked. Maybe we slow down a little bit. We get a little bit scared. We're like, whoa, I should start saving more of my money. I should start tightening up. And also, the credit markets get nervous. And what do? They start tightening up. They throttle down. So you see, it's a vicious cycle. Right? And this throttling down of credit causes more problems in the investment realm, including real estate and Wall Street. These problems cause further tightening, and the news keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I think you get the picture. It's a catch-22. It's a cycle that as more news comes out, people get more nervous. They tighten up. Their corporations tighten up, their credit lines tighten up, and they spend less and less and less is happening, right? So that is something that we are looking out for, right? We have to be aware of, and we have to make our own decision on how it's going to affect us. And again, if you have any questions about credit, or if you can offer, hey, Buck 1964, thank you for joining us. If you can offer insight, if you can offer some points, you're more than welcome to do that in this live discussion as well, because I want you to be a part of this. I want you to be available to provide as much impact that you want to. Yeah. I remember, Mark. I just went by your name, Buck 1964. But yes, thank you so much for joining our live. All right, so talking a little bit more about these credit cycles, and thank you for liking. I definitely appreciate your likes. I appreciate your gifts, everyone. One of the books that's recommended by this author is by Oak Tree Capital Investments, right? And it's the founders, Howard Marks. It's called Mastering the Market Cycle, right? Mastering the market cycle, getting the odds on your side. So you see, that's important. Thank you so much for the gifts. I really appreciate you. God bless you. Right? And so this is a book. It was published in 2018 as a follow-up to an earlier book called The Most Important Thing. Right? And so if you look at some of my past videos, you're also going to see some books that I referenced when we talked about debt and so forth. Okay? But what this book is saying, and what Howard Marks for this book is saying, is that credit markets, they play a bigger role in the economy than most people think. You see, we just, us average people, we're just seeing what's going on the surface, right? We see what the news sends us. We see how they're pushing their agenda and so forth. But there's other things behind the scenes of what's going on in the credit and mortgage marketplaces that affect us tremendously. Right? And so let's look at the extremes in some of the credit cycles that this article is telling us, being the ticking time bomb in real estate. What is it? Is it the prices, or is it what's going on in the credit world? So let's talk about a generous credit market. Who doesn't like things to be generous, right? We've seen a generous credit market for the past decade or so. For the past 10 years, give or take, right? We've had a lot of new real estate investors. There's been a lot of great times, right? There's been a rising tide lifting all boats, right? Rising tide lifting all boats. Happiness, joy, money flowing. You go to the bank and basically it's not as hard to get money. That's what we have been used to for a while, right? Basically, there have been people that have this fear of missing out on profitable opportunities. And so they've been trying to go for it, right? There's a reduced risk aversion and skepticism, so there's less risk aversion. People are have been more excited about getting involved in the real estate market. That's why we have so much pent-up demand. I mean, here in Harford County, if we put a 3-family, 4-family, 5-family, 10-family, 20-family mixed-use property and we price it correctly, until about 6 months ago, they were going quick. You were getting bombarded with leads and questions and phone calls and emails. I mean, it was crazy, right? There was reduced due diligence. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing, because I do believe that buyers have to do their due diligence, right? You have to make sure you're doing those inspections that are needed. Right? Make sure you're really taking a look at the property as far as how much money is it making, right? I mean, right now, try to buy a 3-family and really look at the returns. Like, think about, okay, how much are you really spending not only on taxes, but on cold water, right? Insurance, extra insurance, repairs, maintenance, updates. It is kind of hard these days to make money on those multifamilies when everything else, all those expenses for landlords is so very high. And I'm an optimist. I'm not telling you shouldn't do that, because of course I would love for you to sell your property, buy a property, let's buy you a bigger one, let's upsize. I want to help you grow. I want to help you expand. But a generous credit market, that's what it looks like. There's high asset prices, right? Does that sound familiar? Low prospective returns. We just talked about returns, right? High risk. And sometimes the feeling that, hey, things are going to keep getting better. Things are going to keep getting better. And sometimes that's when the worst deals are made. Because remember, when you buy a property, that's that baseline. Right? That's that baseline. You need to make sure you're buying a property, especially investment property, for a price that you're going to be able to make money at. It's a little bit different when it's a home that you live in, but when it comes to an investment property, right, you want to make sure that you are involved with a transaction that you're going to be able to have that cash flow, that return on investment. You're not going to have to worry about if there's a little bit of a vacancy. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble right from the start. Okay, and so according to this article, right, don't forget Warren Buffett's haunting prediction. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Oop, did I say that out loud? Yes, I did. Right? Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. If you've been swimming naked, now would be a good time to get your clothes on, right? If it's not too late already, right? But right now, it could be that it's too late. It could be that you got yourself involved with some investment properties that you're losing money on. Or the premiums, how much you're bringing in, the cash flow, the returns are so small. Is it almost even worth your time? Like, I mean, I had some 3-family properties here in Harford County. You're lucky if you can make $50 per unit per month. So that would be $150 of profit per unit per month. What are you talking about? $1,400, $1,500 for the whole year. Is that worth your time and energy? Is it more about your ego? Right? Is it more about your ego where you're like, oh, well, I want to own all these properties and I want to house hack, right? I want to do some house hacking. Or is it more about the numbers? What's more important to you? What's more important to you, right? Can we put our egos aside? Can we put our egos aside and say, hey, let's look at the numbers? When I help an investment property owner, I sit down and go over the numbers with them. And a lot of times they don't want to hear the numbers. They don't like, not always. I mean, I have some very smart people that I work for, thank God. Right? I have some people that are like, hey, Rob, give me your advice. Show me your spreadsheet. What about this number? Can we tweak that number? Is that really the number for the monthly cold water bill? Is that really number for that? Can we switch over? Can we convert the heating units? What can we do? And we talk about some real things, right? So you do not want to be the one that's caught swimming naked when the tide goes out. All right, just remember that. Now, so that was the pretty much of what we talked about was a generous market, right? Let's talk about an uptight, cautious credit market, right? And this is, even according to the author of this document, of this article here on Bigger Pockets, I agree with this. I think that it's something that we are doing. It appears that we have entered, or we're entering in to an uptight, cautious credit market. Go to the bank. Tell them you want to buy a 10 unit, a 20 unit, a mixed use property. See how easy it is. It doesn't feel as easy as it used to be. Right? This is a time when fear of loss comes to the forefront. Right? The desire for those amazing gains that maybe we've seen over the last few years are taking a back seat. People are suddenly remembering again the fear of losing money, right? Over trying to get these speculative gains, right? They're a little bit nervous about that right now. Right. And I think they should, because, I mean, if you've gained, a lot of these gains these last few years have been on your investments, have been appreciation. Right. I mean, the prices have gone up, and that's been great news. Right. But I've been through this over the past 20 something years. I've been through 3 or 4 of these cycles. Well, what's going to happen? Right. If you end up back where you started on those capital gains. Right? Now we're talking about cash flow. So that's very, very important, at least to me. Right? You're talking that maybe you made a little bit of money on your tax advantages. Right? And you are talking that maybe you made a little bit of money, dealing with depreciation for investment properties and doing your taxes as well. But if you look at it, how important is that monthly cash flow, that monthly profit, right? How important is it that you keep that vacancy number so low? How important is it that your rents are at market value or maybe higher, and you're keeping the property in nice condition? You're not being a slumlord. Right? You're working on improving the property all the time so that you can keep those rents at a reasonable rate, so that when taxes and insurance go way up, right, you're still able to maintain. You see, when things happen in this economy, I don't usually see all these government programs come out for investment property owners. I don't want to sound like the mean guy, but there's been plenty of programs that have come out for tenants. Am I right? right? There's been plenty of those. But have you seen a lot of programs come out, government programs, from the federal to the state to the local city for investment property owners? No. In fact, things get tougher usually on the investment property owner. Taxes go up, insurance go up. They can let you know the wonderful 2020 happened, and what happens? Tenants can stay in the property without having to pay the rent. But did the mortgage companies, did the towns, did the insurance companies tell those property owners, oh, don't worry about it. You don't have to make these payments. We know what's going on. Don't worry about it. We'll help you out. Not that much, my friends. And I do really, really appreciate the likes and the gifts. So thank you so much. All right. So again, talking about Mr. Marks, Howard Marks' brief description of a cautious, uptight credit market. Well, in an uptight credit market, there's a fear of losing money, right? And we're talking about the lenders, right? We're talking about the banks and maybe some of the new investors. There's heightened risk aversion and skepticism, unwillingness to lend and invest regardless of merit. Like these banks, they want to make sure that everything, I'm telling you the word perfect, and I think it's pretty close to that. They want to see every little document before they're lending out this money. And you might have a current seller that has a month-to-month leases that maybe is a little bit, maybe because they wanted to keep these good tenants for so many years, they kept the rates, the rental rates a little bit low, and they go to sell the property and it's hard. It's hard to sell because no lenders will offer money on those properties. They want long-term leases for a high amount of money. You know, they want especially when it comes to residential, they're looking for those 12-month leases, high market rate, right? There's some shortages of capital, right? That's a cautious, uptight market. Economic contraction and difficulty refinancing. Well, right now, who really wants to refinance? I mean, the interest rates, yes, the last 2-3 weeks, they've gone down a little bit again, but they're not to where they used to be. And so you talk to almost any lender, they're telling you a lot of their business is gone. People are not doing refinancing, right? Are there defaults, bankruptcies, restructuring? There's a little bit of that. I think we're at the very beginning of things. But I mean, you know, I walked through a couple of the malls over this past holiday season. I just can't believe the number of empty storefronts. It's amazing. And even when I put a storefront or a space for lease that's commercial, I'll get 100 barbers, I'll get 100 hair salons, 100 nail salon people, right? Some of those services, we got plenty of those people who want spaces, right? Which is good. Hey, they need a space. But what if you're that property owner that you're looking for an accountant, a tax return place, an attorney? No one's renting out these spaces. It's crazy. Okay? And there's a feeling that things will get worse forever when we talk about a tightening market. And that's how people are feeling. People are starting to feel. Now, I'm not, because I am the consummate optimist. So hopefully you're going to give me some likes for that, right? I want everyone to do well. I want everyone to grow together. I want things to go great for everyone. At the same time, I'm fighting the tide, right? I'm fighting these people that I call them up. You know, I just spoke to one agent on the phone. I said, man, you're sounding down a little bit. He's like, yeah. He goes, I got an edge to me today and I just don't know why, right? And I said, it's only a couple of days after Christmas. I know, but I'm not looking forward to 2023. I see what's happening already. He had 2 transactions fall apart because the bank pulled out, because one was with an appraiser right? Who's basically giving us a really hard time. What's going on? They want everything perfect, right? And one with us a bank where the lender, with our state-run program that they put out to buyers, which we already have too many buyers for the number of homes in our state available for sale, right? They'll tell you, oh yeah, we're only running 3-4 days behind on processing these loans, but here we are a month and a half, 2 months behind, waiting, going back and forth between the buyer and the lender and the state-run program. The state-run we need this piece of paper. Go back to the lender. Lender goes back to the buyer. Buyer gets the paper. Lender says, okay, great, sends it back. Wait another 3, 4, 5 days. Oh, we're still missing this, or we still need to look at this. And the story goes on and on and on. And you're talking about a big circle, right? Back and forth, it's like playing ping pong, right? Back and forth. So this author, I thought this was great, right? Some of these things happening now, a few mini case studies. Okay, so in these mini case studies, do we see evidence of a commercial real estate lending market tightening up? Right, and here's some points. And, again, we can relate these things right back to residential when we talk about investments as well. Okay. So, they're saying that there was one gentleman in particular, the author said that he asked the Real Estate Guys radio host, Robert Helms, what he thought of the presentation, what he thought of this presentation that he gave. And he said he agreed that there might be a soft landing to this. But recent tightening of the markets, right, of the credit markets, made him wonder if things would go south faster than economists' evidence might point to, right? Secondly, this author was on the stage at Bigger Pockets Commercial Real Estate Forum. The same afternoon, A.J. Osborne, a respected self-storage developer, operator, had some strong things to say about this topic. From the stage, he said that at least 2 banks he has long and trusted relationships with were significantly throttling down their lending. This equates to not making commercial loans right now. You see, remember, the banks and the insurance companies, in my opinion, they run Washington, D.C. Right? These banks and some of these large corporations, they're running Washington, D.C. And if they stop making commercial loans, right, now we have these large investors, these large companies who no longer are able to get access to money. Well, what do they start doing? Do they start laying people off? Do they start giving less jobs out to office people, to administrators, to service people, to contractors, even to salespeople? Is there less work available? Of course. And the economy starts slowing down. So this gentleman told the audience that this throttling of commercial credit availability could be the time bomb that undercuts everything else in this economy. Do I have an idea about when the interest rates will be down? So the truth of the matter is, believe it or not, in the last 2-3 weeks, they started slowing down just a little bit. Now, in my opinion, are they going to go back down to 2.5% and 3%, like maybe a couple of years ago, year and a half ago? I highly, highly doubt it. I think it's going to be quite a while. I mean, even if I think about, like, for instance, in my father's lifetime, he's 78 years old, right? Once in his lifetime, he saw these 2.5%, 3% interest rates, which we experienced, all of us together, these last few years. We're still under, like, the 50-year average is around 8% for a 30-year residential mortgage, right? We're still way under that. I mean, you can get a mortgage. I had somebody who had a closing last week. They got 5.75%. So we're still way down that. But if we have the perception, right, that interest rates should be at 3 or 4% or 5%, I think it's going to be quite a while before we get back to that. But that's my personal opinion. I wouldn't wait for that to happen because it might not ever happen again in our lifetime. Who knows? It could happen tomorrow, right? It could happen tomorrow, but probably not. Okay. Again, if anybody wants to join me with questions, or I appreciate you, Land Matthew, for asking that question there. You're definitely more than welcome to join me. All right. So, thirdly, this gentleman, he was recently at what's called the Left Field Investors Meetup, right? Hosted by Jim Pfeiffer. It was a great conference. Rob Levy of LBX was a syndicator who invests in outdoor shopping centers. Think about shopping centers. Man, think about the shopping centers you went to this weekend. Were they really, really busy? Were there vacancies? Right? So this gentleman, reported a substantial decrease in lending for retail space right now. And LBX, right, Left Field Investors, has a long, successful track record and can still get financing. However, he stated that he is seeing a significant slowdown in commercial lending right now. Right? So again, this applies more to private banks, right? Many other institutions like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac with residential lending, they're going to continue to make loans. We know that for the most part. But if you're investing in those types of things, right? If you're investing in properties, it has been tightening up. They're not making it so easy. Owner occupied is always different than investors, right? So right now, are we okay? We're okay, right? Should we breathe a sigh of relief? I don't know. I'm that person that I get up in the morning, I'm ready to go 100 miles an hour every day. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. I'm motivated to help people. And I appreciate the likes for that. I want to help as many people as I possibly can. Right? So if the economy does go into a tailspin, which it probably won't go totally into a tailspin, who knows? Will it significantly impact pricing and home sales and all types of investments? Maybe, maybe not. Right? One of the quotes, again, from Mr. Buffett that the author quoted was, "Be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy." So, you might agree with that or you might not. What does that mean? Be greedy when others are fearful, right? When the market's in chaos, when people are not sure what to do, that's when you make your move. That's when you strike, right? And fearful when others are greedy, when people are taking advantage of too much. Right now, at this very point, right now, today, it's kind of weird because there are still those sellers out there who want too much for their property. And do you want to buy just for the sake of buying, to say that, and I'm probably saying this because of my own perspective. I was 15, 20 years ago, that person that said, "Oh, I own this many units and I'm buying 5 more units and I got 5 more and I got 10 more and I have 8 more." And that's what I was looking to do. My ego was telling me, to build this empire. My ego was not necessarily looking at all the numbers and what could happen in the future and what's the smartest way to go about it. Right? So don't do it for your ego. Do it maybe for your pocketbook. Do it for your legacy. Do it for your family. Right? Look at the numbers. Be that real business person who's going to take a moment to be analytical. Right? To be analytical and say, okay, let me review this one more time with my insurance agent, which if you need a commercial or even residential insurance agent, I have an excellent one. Let me review this one more time with my CPA. If you need an excellent CPA who can talk to you about tax advantages or how you should buy the property, in what way should you finance it, let me know. Let me review this one more time with my attorney, right? I have an excellent attorney who will tell you how to hold the property. Should you create an LLC? Should you create an S corp? In what way should you take it as, if you're with someone else, should you take it as joint tenancy with right of survivorship? Should you take it as, what type of deed should you hold the property in? Should you buy a home with a bargain and sale deed? Should you buy a property with a special warranty deed? Should you buy a property with a general warranty deed? You see, what risks are you taking on? Do you know? Right? Do you have an operating agreement with your best friend or your cousin or your brother or your sister, and know what's going to happen and how things are going to be handled as life goes on? Because things come up that maybe you didn't plan for in the future. And all these things play a part. Not only the credit markets, but how are you handling your business? So if I could have, a light, I definitely appreciate it, because I thought that was pretty good in really trying to help you get to where you might want to be. Okay, so here we go. There will likely be an upcoming opportunity to find deals that you haven't been able to find before. You see, that's what I'm looking forward to. People understanding, okay, here's how much revenue this property brings in. Here's the location that it's in, right? And so here's really what it's worth in today's market, and that it makes sense, and that it's a fair, F-A-I-R. Is it a fair situation, a fair transaction for everyone, or is someone trying to be too greedy, right? See, that's the one thing that'll turn me off. I spoke to someone this morning, and I said to him, hey, listen, I want to get some windows put into my home. And he's a good guy. And I said, and I'm willing to pay you a fair price. I don't want him working for free. At the same time, I don't want to be taken advantage of. I want to pay a fair price. Now, my perspective on what is fair, well, we take a look at a lot of different things. What's fair and what's not fair. Is a gallon of milk, is it fair to pay $3 for a gallon of milk, $4 a gallon of milk? Is it fair to pay $10 for a gallon of milk? How much is a fair price for a loaf of bread? How much is a fair price for a 1,500 square foot home? Is $200,000, $400,000? Is $1 million a fair price for a 1,500 square foot home? Unless it has some 14 karat gold doorknobs, window frames, and so forth. I don't know, right? But I guess anything can happen. Okay. So this slowing economy, which I believe it is that way, could mean a great opportunity for many of us. Howard Marks said that, ironically, while the worst deals are made in the best of times, the best of deals are done in the worst of times. So you may soon have opportunities you have not been seeing. Right? You might soon have these excellent opportunities. Well, what's soon? We have no idea. The author has no idea. I have no idea. But if the Great Recession is any indicator, the best deals will probably not come in the coming year or so. We're probably talking about in the next couple of years. Because this year is going to be that year where everybody's trying to figure things out. Most likely, it's going to be a bunch of chaos. You're going to have those sellers who still think their house is worth way up here. You're going to have these investors who are ahead of the game and say, no, your house is down there. And then you're going to have those people who are trying to be fair, have an open mind, that are trying to work it out with everyone so that everyone can move on and move forward in what they want to do and improve their life. Right? So, of course, the Great Recession may not be the best comp given the gravity of that crisis. We just can't tell. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes a lot of the time. All right. Now, of course, there's a little bit of frightening news, right? And I'm not that person that really wants to frighten anyone. but this is the truth of the matter, right? So the truth of the matter, and hear me out. I appreciate it. So one final note, according to this article, there was an article by Fitch Ratings, right? Sounds sort of upbeat if you're not reading closely, but check out this paragraph, which paints a pretty serious picture for many commercial real estate deals. Okay, and so here's this little article saying, however, 23%, so 23%, or $6.2 billion of maturing volume would not be able to refinance. See, would not be able to refinance under any of the scenarios. Net operating income growth averaging at least 1.5 times current in place net operating income, or a new equity infusion that deleverages existing debt by at least 1/3 on average would be needed to pass the refinancing thresholds. So what this is saying is that we need more net operating income, right, to pass the refinancing thresholds. What banks are saying is like, hey, we have a loan in place with you already, right? We don't want to make things any riskier. We're not going to give you better terms if you're not showing that your net operating income can increase, or that you have enough to run this property, right? So that's kind of the frightening news, that $6.2 billion or 23%, right? That's almost 25%. Cannot refinance under the scenarios, because they probably bought the properties at too high of a price without enough cash flow, right? Without enough cash flow. Again, goes back to that whole thing where I had people buying these properties for investment only, showing that it's only going to make $50 a month per unit per month, which that's $150 a month times 12 months. What happens if the hot water heater breaks? There goes that money. What happens if one tenant misses 1 month of rent, or leaves, or abandons the property? There goes that money. See, people are going to be operating at a negative right from the start. Okay. Anybody have any questions that they want to share or offer? Okay. So again, the name of this article, and I do want to give this gentleman, Paul Moore, I want to give him kudos. I think this was an excellent article. It was on biggerpockets.com, and it's called The Ticking Time Bomb in Real Estate is Not Prices. It's this: the tightening credit market. And this spells trouble. All right. So, my friends, that's everything, right, that I have for you today. I'm available if you have some questions. If you're looking at properties, maybe for investment here in Connecticut, I'm definitely available to talk with you about it, do some analysis, go show you properties, and we can talk about it. If you're thinking about maybe selling a property, now might be that time. Why wait till prices go lower? If you're thinking about selling in 5 years from today, I really do believe, and it's not that salesperson baloney, I do believe that now is the best time, because we are in the middle of things. Things are moving, right? Things are grooving. So why wait any longer? I'm available. Again, Paul Moore from Wellings Capital. Thank you so much for letting me read this article and sharing it with others. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to do so. I wish you all a very happy holiday week. I know we're still here. We're in between Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's and some of the other holidays. And so I'm here working. I'm available if you need me. I appreciate your likes. I appreciate your gifts. God bless you all. And this is Rob Rosa. Hopefully your favorite real estate broker. Signing out, my friends. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.